The jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Did any of you see anything about this case on the media, including the internet, television, radio, newspaper? I see no hands. Mr. Martinez, you may continue with follow-up.
Now, one of the things you did for the jurors was describe the shooting. Do you remember answering a question for the jurors involving that?
Yes.
And what you actually said was that it actually started when you were taking photographs of Mr. Alexander in the shower, correct?
The shooting, no. The whole incident that precipitated it, yes.
So, yes, this did start with you taking photographs in the shower, correct?
Yes.
And you were taking photographs of him in the shower, and according to you, there came a point where you sort of fumbled the camera and you took a photograph of his rear or posterior, correct?
I don't remember the order the photos were taken in.
Pardon?
I don't know the order that the photos were taken in.
Well, do you remember telling us that, that exhibit number 160 this photograph here, take a look at it. Which is the last of the sequence at 5:30:30. Do you remember telling us that that was the photograph that you took when the camera was being fumbled? Do you remember telling us, not us, telling me that on cross-examination?
No, I don't. I remember saying that it was inadvertent.
And also, this is an inadvertent photograph then?
Yes, that was not intentionally taken.
It was not intentionally taken, right?
That's correct.
And this was when you were fumbling the camera, correct?
I don't know if that was taken when I was fumbling it or not.
So, but you took this photograph, but it was inadvertent in the sense that you didn't mean to press the button to capture this image, correct?
Correct.
And after that, ma'am, he continued to be in the shower because the camera didn't actually fall down to the floor, right? Overall.
I don't know when that photo was taken. It was just taken during the sequence of the events.
Well, you do remember that. You told us that this was an inadvertent photograph, right?
Yes.
And then if we take a look at the next one of the ones that were seized that you deleted, which is Exhibit 161.
Objection beyond the scope of the questions.
Approach, please. You may continue.
This is another inadvertent photograph, correct?
That's correct.
And that's at 5:31:14, correct?
Yes.
And so if the math is correct, the difference between the one where he's seated and this one is 44 seconds, right?
I didn't see the time on the other one.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at it then. It's 5:30:30, correct?
Correct.
So it's 44 seconds difference, correct?
Yeah, what was the other time? Sorry.
Sure. 5:31:14 and 5:30:30.
Okay, yes.
It is 44 seconds, correct?
Yes.
And this exhibit 161 is when the camera, according to you, actually hit the ground, right?
I don't know if it's hitting the ground as that photo was taken or not.
So you don't know how this photograph was taken then, right?
It could have been when I was trying to catch it. I don't know.
At some point, the camera hits the ground, right?
Yes.
That's what you told the jury, right?
It hits the mat, yes, and rolls to the top.
Ma'am, yes or no? Didn't you tell the jury that the camera hit the ground near the shower? Yes or no?
No. I said it landed on the mat.
Is that near the shower?
Yes.
Is the mat on the floor near the shower?
Yes.
And the camera hitting the mat, would that be near the shower?
Yes.
So you did tell us then that the camera went down, hit the mat, or went down near the shower, didn't it?
Yes.
And then it rolled, right?
Yes.
You just can't tell us if this is the photograph that was taken then, though, right?
I don't know exactly.
Sustained.
And you then said that Mr. Alexander became very upset, right?
Yes.
And that's what started this whole thing out, because he sort of stepped out of the shower and then came after you, right?
He picked me up.
That's coming after you, isn't it?
I guess. I think when I think of coming after, I think of chasing, but he was already right next to me.
So he didn't come after you then, all right? So at that point, you weren't afraid because he wasn't coming after you then, right?
I was afraid because he picked me up and body slammed me.
Were you not afraid because he wasn't coming after you? You said he wasn't coming after you, right?
Objection, double negative compound question.
Overruled.
He wasn't chasing me yet. We were right next to each other.
So he wasn't coming after you, correct? That's what you just said, right?
I don't really know what you mean by coming after.
Ma'am, I asked you the question. Do you remember me asking you the question and you saying, no, he wasn't coming after me at that time? Do you remember that you just said that not more than a minute or so ago?
No, a moment ago I said I think of coming after as chasing.
So he's in the shower and he's making movements towards you. Would that be fair?
Yes.
And according to you, those movements culminated or continued when he grabbed you and put you down on the ground, right?
Yes.
And as a result of that, you said that you bumped your head or hit your head, right?
Yes.
And that maybe it knocked the wind out of you, right?
Yes.
And that you were in fear at that point, right?
Yes, very much.
And that you were able to fight him off so that you could get away, right?
I rolled.
Okay, so you rolled so that you were able to get away, correct?
Yes.
He wasn't, for whatever reason, either strong enough or didn't have a good enough hold on you so that you could get away, right?
He let me go when he body slammed me.
Okay, so then you went down on the ground and he's standing over you, right? With it next to your shins, right?
Somewhere in that area, yes.
And then you roll away and you begin to run down the hallway, right?
Yes.
One of the things that you also indicated with regard to one of the juror questions was that it was possible that the camera was picked up by Mr. Alexander and then deposited or placed at the end of the hallway. Do you remember answering that?
Yes, I remember saying it was possible.
You did say that, yes or no?
Yes.
And if that's true then, that's what you really believe, then that would mean that after he body slammed you and you took off, he started looking at the camera, right?
If that was what I believed, but I didn't
Right.
say that's what I believed.
Well, you said it was possible before, didn't you?
Because somebody asked if it was possible.
You did say it, yes or no?
Yes.
And so if it's possible, you said it, if it's possible that he picked up the camera, then that would require him to bend down, because it was on the ground, right?
Yes.
Pick it up, right?
Yes.
Look at it or do whatever he was going to do with it, right?
I don't know what he would do when he picked it up.
Right, but we talked about the possibility and you agreed that it was possible, right?
Certainly possible.
If he's doing that and he's looking at the camera and you're down the hallway, he's not very close to you, is he?
Not at that, if that's even what happened, but I don't know. How do you even answer that?
Right?
I don't know.
Well, no. You said that it was possible. Do you remember saying it was possible?
Yes.
And if that's possible, then you're down the hallway and it's also possible that he's not very close to you then, right? If we're using the word possible, right?
Either scenario is possible. He could be close or not.
Oh, so he was so close that you could turn around and see him even though he turned to look at the camera?
I don't know. I guess I could have turned around, but I wasn't thinking of turning around. I was thinking of getting away.
You didn't turn around, right?
Not when I was running down the hall.
Right. You didn't see him, did you?
No.
And the fact that he may have turned to go to the camera adds time to this sequence of events, doesn't it?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Well, I don't know that he did that, so I don't know how to answer that.
I understand that you don't know that he did that, but you said it was possible. Do you remember saying that it was possible in response to one of the questions?
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
Well, if it's possible that he did that, that indicates that there's a measure of time involved for Mr. Alexander to look down there, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
I guess.
When you say you guess, that means what? What does that mean?
It means
Yes or no?
all possibilities are a guess because I didn't look back, so I don't know what's going on.
And if he then took it and placed it down in the end of the hallway, one of the things that you didn't tell us was that you heard a bump or anything like that. You didn't hear anything dropping, did you?
After the camera,
Overruled.
after the camera dropped, I don't recall hearing another drop.
Right. So if he would have dropped it at the end of the hallway, you can't sit here and tell us that you heard anything, right?
That's right. After that,
And then you went into the closet, right?
correct.
According to you, that's where you went and obtained the gun, right?
Yes.
You went up on the shelving and you got the gun, right?
Yes.
Then you went out the door and into the bathroom again, right?
Yes.
When you went into the bathroom, you were able to turn around, if you will, and now you had the gun in your hands, right? That's what you told us, right?
Yes.
And that's when he was coming at you in this linebacker pose, right?
Around that time, yes.
And that's when you shot him in the face, right?
Yeah, that's when the gun went off.
No, you keep saying the gun went off. The gun was in your hand, right?
Yes.
In hands. Actually, the way you demonstrated was in both hands, right?
Right.
And you were pointing it at him, right?
Yes, I did point it at him.
And there was a metal thing or a bullet that came out of it, and it hit him in the head, right?
Yes.
So then, according to you, he fell on top of you, right?
It was kind of on top, but maybe more to the right. I don't know. It wasn't directly on top of me. I was trying to prevent him from getting on top of me.
And he did get on top of you at that point, and you were in fear for your life, right?
Absolutely.
And he was, according to you, and he was saying things to you, right?
Yes.
And one of the other things that you told us in response to a juror question was that when you are stressed out and people are yelling at you, you're like a computer that freezes, right?
Typically, yes.
And this computer that freezes, you said, people may be talking, but I can't remember or know what they're saying, right?
That's correct.
And so in this case, that's what happened. You, according to you, you were in fear for your life, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
So that would mean that things were going on in your head and you were stressed out in your head, right?
It was a very high stressful situation.
So the answer is yes, right?
Yes, I'd say that.
And however, at this particular point, when you're down there and you're trying to get away and you're in this stressful situation, for whatever reason, this is one of the times that your computer doesn't freeze up, right?
Well, I don't remember everything he was screaming. I only remember pieces. So
Yes
I don't
or
know.
no?
I don't know that it was completely frozen. I remember a few phrases.
Well, you used that analogy when you were answering questions for the jurors, didn't you?
Yes.
You said that your computer froze and you don't remember what people say, right?
Yes, that's the best analogy I can think of.
Right, and that's what you said, right?
Correct.
And so in this particular case, though, even though your computer is frozen, you do remember what he said, right?
Not everything, just a few phrases.
Sure, the real operative phrase, fucking kill you, bitch. You remember that one, right?
Absolutely, the threat on my life, I remember
Right.
that.
That's so even though your computer may have frozen us to everything else, that's the one thing you do remember, though, right?
I recall that specifically.
And then you got up, and then the fog started to come in, right?
I'd say the fog started to come in after the gunshot. After I got up and he threatened my life, I have no clear memories after that.
And that's when the memory issue started, correct? Right?
I'd say that.
Actually, man, the way you describe that, it's impossible for the killing to have happened in that manner, isn't it?
Objection argumentative.
No, that's just according to you.
Isn't it?
No, it's not impossible.
Well, ma'am, we know that there's some action that is going on at 5:31:14, right? Something's going on, right?
Yes.
We also know that Exhibit 162 is 5:32:16, which is a minute and 2 seconds later, correct?
Correct.
You didn't have the camera with you when you shot him, right?
I did not.
So this needed to have happened before you shot him, right?
That's correct.
So we're talking about a minute and 2 seconds between this and this right here, 162. Exhibit 162, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, do you remember on cross-examination that I asked you about the knife? The knife that you said had been used to cut the rope. Do you remember me asking you about that on cross-examination?
Yes.
And do you remember that you told me, well, it was used initially to cut the rope? You told us that, right?
Yes.
And then after it was on your wrist, it was used to cut the rope off your wrist. Do you remember telling us that?
No, I remember you saying that.
Pardon?
I remember you saying that, but that's not what I said.
So you're saying that the last time you saw the knife was when it was used to cut the rope, right?
That's correct.
And do you remember that during that same cross-examination, ma'am? I asked you, well, did the knife go in the bedroom? And you said, I don't know. Do you remember telling me that?
Yes.
I asked you if it went into the closet. And you said you didn't know, right?
That's right.
You said you didn't know where that knife had gone, right?
I said that I didn't remember where it ended up.
Right, which means you don't know where it was, right?
That's
After the first cutting, you don't know where it was, right? That's what you said.
Yeah, I can't remember where it was placed after we cut the rope.
Right, which is the point. You don't remember where the knife was after it was used to cut the rope, right?
Yes.
And if that's the case, that you don't remember where the knife was, after the shooting, as you're standing there, and the fog or your memory comes in or the memory starts to create a problem when you're doing that, the fog doesn't help you remember things, does it? It's not a good thing for your memory, is it?
Well, the way you described it isn't accurate.
Well, I'm asking you whether or not this fog that you've described for us, whether or not this fog enhances your ability or improves your ability to remember. Yes or no?
I don't understand how memory works in the brain. I just know.
No, I'm not
things
asking
get
you to talk to me about the physiology of the brain. I'm asking about you. And I'm asking you to tell me whether or not this fog that you've been telling us about increases your ability to remember, even though you're going into this fog.
I would not say that it increases, but I don't know. I don't remember.
How about this lack of memory? Does the lack of memory increase your ability to remember things you didn't remember before?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, you're the one that has been telling us about these instances where Mr. Alexander would come at you, according to you, and then that would and abuse you, and that would create memory issues for you. Do you remember telling us that?
On some instances,
Sure. You're the only one that knows about this memory stuff, right? Because according to you, it happened to you, right?
I don't think I'm the only one that knows.
Well, I'm not asking if you're the only one that knows. I'm asking you whether or not you are the one that has the best knowledge about what happens to you when this fog rolls in.
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled, you may answer.
I don't really have an understanding of what happens. I just know I can only describe it the best that I can.
And in describing it, ma'am, to use your word, when the fog rolls in, it does not improve your memory, does it?
I don't know. I wouldn't say it does.
Well, in this case, ma'am, so you've now shot him. You've told us that the fog is rolling in and that you have no memory. You still don't know where the knife is, do you?
Objection.
I don't know.
Argumentative.
Overruled.
I don't remember a lot from that period. It could be.
Right, but you told us before that period even that you didn't know where the knife was. Do you remember just telling me that?
Today, as I sit here, I don't remember where the knife was. On June 4th, I might have remembered where it was.
Do you remember in cross-examination that I asked you if you knew where the knife was on June 4th? And you said, no, I don't remember where the knife was because I didn't pay attention to what he was doing with it. Do you remember telling us that on cross-examination?
I didn't use those words. I just said that he cut the rope, and I don't remember where he put it when he was done cutting it.
Those aren't the exact words, but that was the understanding that you remembered about him cutting the knife, but you didn't remember where he had put the knife back then. That's what you told us on cross-examination. Do you remember that? Because the prosecutor was trying to ascertain from you where the knife had gone. Right?
Those two questions.
Which one do you want to answer? Answer them both.
I'll answer the first one. I don't remember saying that. I remember speculating that it could have gone to the nightstand or it could have been left in the bathroom. I don't recall talking about the closet, which you brought up a few minutes ago. And then if that's right, I don't remember the second question.
So if you don't know where it was, it could have been in the closet, right?
Objection, argumentative.
I don't know.
When there's an objection, don't answer the question.
I'm sorry.
Rule on the objection.
Okay.
Your objection is
Argumentative.
overruled. You may answer now.
Right?
I don't know.
And so as you shot Mr. Alexander, you by necessity then have to go look for the knife, don't you?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, you didn't have the knife in your hand when you shot him. Did you?
Sustained.
Did you have the knife in your hand when you shot him?
Objection, argumentative. It's the same question.
Overruled.
No, I did not.
So that means that if you didn't have the knife in your hand, you needed to go get it from somewhere, right?
I guess. I don't know.
No. There's no guessing here now. If you didn't have it in your hand and you just shot him and you rolled away, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
You got out. You were able to get away, right? That's what you told us, right?
That's right.
You needed to go get that knife at that point, correct?
No, it's possible Travis grabbed the knife first.
Okay. But you told us that the knife wasn't there. Do you remember telling us that just now?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
No, I remember testifying that it wasn't in my hand when the gun went off.
Oh, so as Mr. Alexander's coming towards you, he now has the knife in his hand. That's what you're telling us.
No, I didn't say that either.
Okay, so as Mr. Alexander is getting blasted and going down, he's got the knife in his hand, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
That was all in the same moment when he was lunging at me.
Doesn't have the knife in his hand, does he?
Not in that particular moment, no.
Ma'am, I'm asking you, at that particular time, he didn't have the knife in his hand, right?
I just said no.
And he goes down, sort of next to you, right?
Yes, we both go tumbling.
Sure, you both go down. You never told us that he had any knife there, did you?
No, I wasn't asked.
Oh, I see. So what you're saying is, now he has the knife with him, right? Now that's what you're saying, he's got the knife.
I didn't say that either.
Well, which one is it, ma'am? Does he have the knife or he doesn't have the knife? You were there. This is before.
Argumentative, asked and answered about 3 times now.
Sustained.
You do then agree that if you didn't know where the knife was, and Mr. Alexander didn't have it, it would take time for you to go find that knife, wouldn't it?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
I don't know. I don't know where the knife was.
Right. Since you didn't know where the knife was, it would take time to go find it, irrespective of where it was, wouldn't it?
Objection, this mischaracterizes her testimony or memory now and her memory or awareness at that time.
Overruled.
Can you repeat your question?
Janelle, could you?
You do then agree that if you didn't know where the knife was and Mr. Alexander didn't have it, would it take time for you to go find that knife, wouldn't it?
I don't know the answer to that.
You don't think that a movement, such as a step, takes time?
Again, argumentative.
Sustained.
Ma'am, if the knife wasn't, even if the knife was there, your grabbing it took time, didn't it?
Objection, argumentative. It's the same question.
Overruled.
I guess in theory, I don't remember grabbing it.
All right, in theory. And if the knife, for example, since you can't tell us where it was, but if the knife was in the bedroom, which some of the action was going on there, that would have taken more time than if it was, for example, in the closet, right?
Objection calls for speculation, argumentative.
Overruled.
Not necessarily. I don't remember it being in the closet, and it would depend on the point of if it were ever in the closet at all,
I'm not
or the
asking
bedroom.
you that question. My question is more about time. Isn't it true that if the knife was in the bedroom or the closet as opposed to the bathroom, that would take more time to go and get it, right?
At that point, I guess, because we were in the bathroom when
Right.
we fell.
Right. And if you didn't know where it was, assuming that you didn't know where it was back then, it would have taken time to actually look for it, wouldn't it?
Objection causes speculation. She has no memory.
Overruled.
I guess under that theory,
Sure, under that theory. It would take time, right?
yeah, I guess.
Well, again, you keep saying, I guess, like you don't know about time. You own a watch, right? Or at some point in your life, you've owned watches, right?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
You know about time, ma'am. You know that movement takes time, don't you?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
In this case, what we have to deal with, as we did the mathematics, 62 seconds. And what you're telling us, under your scenario, is that in 62 seconds, you get body slammed, you do whatever you do, but you get away, you run down the hallway, you go in the closet, you grab a gun, you back up, you shoot Mr. Alexander. After you shoot Mr. Alexander, you pick up the camera because you said it's only possibility, and he's already down the hallway with his throat slit. Right? That's what you're telling us happened in those 62 seconds.
It's
right?
argumentative lack of foundation.
Overruled. You may answer.
I didn't say that was the only possibility with the camera. So that wasn't correct the way you asked it.
I'm not asking
And I don't
you
know that his
about-
throat is slit in that picture either.
I'm not asking you about the possibility. I'm asking you if you're telling us that within 62 seconds, you drop the camera, because that's what precipitates these things. And we have this right here where there's some action, which is exhibit number 161, that in the 62 seconds between that photograph and exhibit 162, you are body slammed, you get away, you go down the hallway, you go in the closet, you get the gun, you go into the bathroom again, you then turn around and you point the gun, you shoot him, he goes down, he's still pawing at you and saying, fucking kill you, bitch. And then, after you're able to get away, you go get the knife, and he ends up at the end of the hallway, all in 62 seconds. That's what you're telling us?
No, that's not what I'm saying. And he didn't say fucking kill you bitch till I got away. And
Pardon?
he didn't say fucking kill you bitch until after I got away. You said he said it before I broke away, but he said it right as I broke away.
So he did say it, though, didn't he?
He did say that.
Right. And he said it after you shot him, right?
Yes, that occurred afterward.
Right. And after he was grabbing at you, right?
Yes,
After you were able to get away, right?
right as I was breaking away.
That's when he said, fucking kill you, bitch, right?
That's correct.
And then you had to go get the knife for everything to occur so that we got here.
I don't know all the particulars of what's going on in that picture, so I can't even say if that's true or not.
Do you deny that that's your foot there? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not denying anything about the photo. I just don't know details of the photo.
Well, you do know the timing of it, though, don't you? You know the
Yes.
amount of time, right?
Yes.
And you understand that, for example, this thing right here is blood, and blood doesn't happen unless you get cut, right?
Objection. It's argumentative. She doesn't know the source of there's several injuries testified to.
Sustained.
Now, man, the other thing there's another reason why your scenario is impossible, the one that you talked to us about, isn't there?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Well, ma'am, let's talk about this issue of him getting shot. You say that he gets shot, right?
That's correct.
Goes down, and you describe for us that he's pawing at you, and then you're able to sort of stand up, fucking kill you, bitch, and then the fog rolls in, right?
No, then I have no memory. The fog was already there.
The fog was already there. And the fog was, when did the fog set in then? If it didn't set in then?
I don't recall an exact time, but
No,
definitely
sequence
as the
of
gun...
events. I'm not asking for time, just sequence of events.
Right, well, definitely after the gun went off, things are starting to get... My memory's, I don't know, it starts to get a little bit more confusing at that point.
And at the time that your mind starts fogging up when the gun went off, you haven't seen the knife, right?
I mean, I saw it earlier.
Sure you did, but not as part of this attack, right?
That's correct.
And so we've talked about it, but you do then have to get the knife in your hand for there to be injuries like in 180, right?
You're already beyond the scope of the questions.
Please.
Your Honor, there was an objection.
May continue.
You indicated in response to a juror's question, right, that the shooting happened and he went down, right?
Yes.
And that you were able to roll away, correct? Or get up.
Yes.
And you stood up, and as you're getting up is when he threatened you, right?
Yes, that's when he verbally threatened me.
At no time in response to that question did you ever indicate that Mr. Alexander's hands were in contact with any knife, did you?
No, I did not.
And given the time constraints here and the fact that you didn't know where the knife was, it would have been impossible for you not to have the knife with you when the attack happened, right?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
I don't understand that question.
Or not the famous, the threat, right?
Yes.
You were standing at that time, right?
No, I was on the ground next to him and breaking away.
You're
I don't know if I was
breaking away.
getting up or what. It was just all very fast and contemporaneous with that.
And you did stand up at some point. You remember telling us that, right?
I believe I did.
And when you stood up, he was still on the ground, right?
I don't recall looking back.
Pardon?
I don't recall looking back.
So you were, even though he's still a threat to you, according to you, and he's just threatened your life, you turn your back on the threat?
Yeah, I'm trying to get away. Yeah, I'm trying to get away from him.
All right, so you then try to get away. And at the time you're trying to get away, which you now seem to remember, you don't have the knife, right?
Up to that point, I don't.
Yes or no, do you have the knife at that point?
No.
Also speculation, she said she doesn't remember.
Overruled.
Right at that point where my memory begins to end, I didn't have the knife at any point that I remember. So the answer would have to be no on that.
So the answer is no then, right?
Yes.
And if, again, according to what you explained to the jurors, if he's already down and is not going to be able to get up, that means that you had to come back to him, right?
I didn't explain that to the jurors.
Ma'am, that means you have to come back to him with a knife, don't you?
This is her testimony, it's argumentative.
Approach, please.
We are having equipment difficulties. It will be a few minutes. The last objection was sustained.
Ma'am, at some point, you do remember that you had the knife in your hand, correct?
I don't remember that part.
Do you remember at some point indicating to this jury that you dropped the knife? Do you remember saying that?
I do remember that, yes.
So if you dropped the knife, where did you drop it from, if not your hand?
Presumably my hand, I just don't remember gripping it.
Did I ask you whether or not you had gripped it?
That's what I took it as.
No, did I ask you whether or not you were gripping the knife, ma'am?
You didn't use those words specifically.
Right, I asked you whether or not the knife was in your hand. Do you remember that?
I don't remember you wording it that way.
Did you drop the knife?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell that to the jury?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell them that you screamed, right?
Yes, I did.
So then the knife was in your hand, right?
Yes, it was.
And this issue about gripping has nothing to do with it, does it?
I would think it would.
Do you think how strongly you were gripping it is important to this case?
I wasn't talking about the strength of the grip, just
Well,
that
no,
I gripped
am. I'm
it.
asking you that just now. That was the question.
Will you repeat that?
Do you think that how strongly you were gripping it is important to this case?
Objection, argumentative, and relevance.
Overruled.
I wouldn't know.
Well, you're the one that brought this up about not gripping it. You seem to think that's important. Why do you think that's important?
Objection, argumentative.
You did have the knife in your hand, right?
Yes.
It was after the shooting, according to you, right?
Yes.
And you previously had seen that knife in the bedroom, right?
I don't recall. I think it was at one point, but I know it was definitely in the bathroom, but it may have gone to the bedroom. I'm not sure.
And you did drop the knife, right?
Yes, I did.
And after dropping the knife, you took it with you, right?
Overruled.
Took it where?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Where did you take it?
I have no idea.
You don't remember. You said you dropped the knife, right?
Yes, I remember that.
When the jury asked the question about items, you indicated that you took certain items. Do you remember saying that?
Yes,
And you said the gun, right?
I remember the gun.
Right? And a number of other items that you took, right?
Just the items I remember are
Overruled.
the items I remember are my luggage, of course, and I remember the rope and I remember the gun. I don't remember having the knife at any point after I was a little more lucid.
Ma'am, you were wearing shoes that day when you got to Mr. Alexander's house, right?
When I arrived, yes.
When we took a look at, if you take a look at Exhibit 162, you're wearing socks, right?
Yes.
So you took your shoes too, didn't you?
I was without my shoes when I
Pardon?
realized what was going on in the car. I didn't have my shoes anymore.
So you're saying that you left your shoes behind. Is that what you're saying?
I left them somewhere. and
No,
they
I'm
didn't
not
come with
asking
me.
you if you left them somewhere. Are you saying that you left your shoes behind at Mr. Alexander's home?
Objection, calls for speculation, argumentative.
Overruled.
I don't remember what happened to my shoes. I just know that I didn't have shoes when I realized that I didn't have shoes.
You also took your socks off before you left the house, didn't you?
I don't remember.
Well, do you remember indicating that you were barefoot when you were driving?
Yes.
So you must have taken your socks off in the house, right?
Could have been anywhere.
Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
It could have been anywhere, not necessarily the house.
The knife, where you said you heard a sound, right? When you dropped it, right?
Yes, I heard it cling on the tile.
And so you're saying now, the way you're saying it is that you dropped it in the bathroom, right?
I believe it was the bathroom, yes.
And you're saying that you believe it was in the bathroom because there was a sound of tile, correct?
That's correct.
And you have no recollection whatsoever about picking it up afterwards, do you? According to you, right?
No, I screamed and I don't remember anything after.
You just remember the scream and then away you went, right?
Yeah, I guess my memory.
The way she went.
Sustained.
You remember screaming, right?
Yes, I do.
And you remember nothing else, right?
Nothing immediately after that. That's correct.
Actually, it was for many hours, right?
Yes, that's right.
The next thing that you say that you remember is stopping on the side of the road, right?
Yes.
You don't remember gassing up or anything, right? You told the jurors you don't remember anything else, right?
There's some vague memories,
I
but
understand that, but generally what you told to the jurors in response to the question was you don't remember anything, right?
Objection, argumentative. She just explained she had vague memories.
Overruled.
it wasn't that black and white. But in general, there's a huge gap there.
And you indicated that it was the side of the road where you finally sort of started to come out of whatever fog you were in, right?
Somewhat, yes.
And you don't know which way you were driving, right?
Objection, beyond the scope of the question.
Overruled.
By that point, I didn't know which direction I was driving in.
And you indicated to the jurors that you were around or short of the Nevada border, by the side of the road in the desert, when you finally started to know what was going on, right?
I'm going to object to the amount. Can we approach?
You may.
told this jury about pulling off the side of the road, correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that you have very vague memories, or hardly any memories at all, from leaving the house until you get to this area outside of the desert, right?
That's right.
And this area is near the Arizona-Nevada border, right?
I don't know where I was.
Well, you got in your car and you drove after that, didn't you?
Yes.
And you drove towards Hoover Dam, right?
I don't know where I was driving toward, but I did eventually reach Hoover Dam.
Right. And how much time did it take you to get to Hoover Dam from where you cleaned up?
Objection calls for speculation. She's already said she doesn't remember.
Overruled. You may answer.
Well, I remember driving in the sun for a little ways. The sun was in my eyes, but by the time I reached the dam, it was dark, so I don't know how long it took.
I'm not asking you about driving into the sun. I'm asking you about the time that you stopped by the side of the road. You told the jury that you did, remember?
Yes, I did.
You got rid of the gun. You told them, right?
Yes.
You got rid of the clothing, right?
I believe I did.
Yeah, that's what you told them, though, right?
Yes.
And so at that point, ma'am, when you were at that road, you continued driving to a point that you got to Hoover Dam, right?
Yes, and I need to correct my last answer. I don't remember what I did with the clothes.
Well, all right, but you did get rid of the gun. If you didn't get rid of the clothing, you do remember telling us that you got rid of the gun, right?
I do remember that.
And then you did continue driving on, and you came to Hoover Dam, right?
Yes.
And then you continued driving, right?
Yes.
Now, and before that, from the time you left the house until you got to the side of the road, you did indicate that maybe you were driving into the sun. That's what you told us, right?
At one point, yes, I think it was.
And during this trip, between the time that you didn't know what was going on, you left the house, until you got to the side of the road, you put gas in the car, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So this fog had lifted enough so that as you're driving along, you do know what's going on, right?
I don't know what you mean, because
Well,
there might
you
have
know
been
that
some
the car
sense.
needs gasoline, right?
If it needed gas, I would have put gas in it.
Well, no, you just told me, ma'am, just now that you did put gas in the car, didn't you?
I don't have specific memory of gassing up, but if it needed the gas, then I would have put the gas in it.
Ma'am, didn't you just tell me right now that we talked about the fog, you talked about certain images, stopping by the side of the road, and then I asked you, isn't it true that in between there, you put gas in the car and you said yes?
I did say that.
And so you were cognizant enough while you were driving through this fog that you were able to look at a gas gauge, weren't you?
Presumably.
Well, no, not presumably. Why would you be putting gas in the car if it didn't need it, right?
That's correct.
And you used the gas cans, didn't you?
I don't remember.
You don't remember, you do remember putting gas, but you don't remember what the method of delivery was?
I don't remember putting gas. I'm presuming I did, just like I'm presuming everything else about June 4th that we know are facts. I just don't have memory of those things.
You're presuming that you did, but that's not what you just told us, is it?
I didn't say that specifically.
No, you didn't. You said, yes, I did put gas in the car, right?
Right?
And when you got to, and it came from the gas cans, didn't it?
I don't-
Objection, argumentative, ask and answer. She already said she didn't know.
Sustained.
The items that you told us that you got rid of, or that you told the jury, included the gun, right?
Correct.
You also don't know what happened to the clothing, right?
That's right.
And if we go back to the scene, one of the things that we know and that we talked about to the jury about was this camera. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You did leave the camera behind, right?
Yes.
But there were deleted images, right?
Yes.
And one of the deleted images that was on there was Exhibit 162, right?
Yes.
You did take the rope, right?
Yes.
And the knife, you said that you heard it clank, so you believe that that was dropped in the bathroom, right?
That's right.
Ma'am, everything that we've talked about that has anything to do with the crime, which is what we've talked about, you somehow, in this fog of yours, manipulated, didn't you?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Well, you did touch the camera, right? in this fog, right?
I believe I did.
Right, because of where it was found, right? And you did delete the images, didn't you?
I-
Testimony.
Overruled.
Maybe some or all, I don't remember.
You deleted photographs. How about that?
I probably
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
did, but I don't remember.
I'm not asking you if you remember. I'm asking you whether or not you deleted them. Yes or no?
Then the
Objection,
answer,
if she doesn't remember, she can't answer the question despite his insistence.
Rephrase the question.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you whether you remember. I'm asking you whether or not, based on what you know about this case, you deleted certain photographs, didn't you?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, lack of foundation. She has memory.
Overruled. You may answer.
I guess I did.
You guess you did, meaning you believe somebody else may have done it, right?
That doesn't mean
Objection,
that.
argumentative.
Overruled.
Do you believe somebody else did it?
No.
Also, in addition to that, this knife that inflicted these injuries, you believe that you dropped it, right?
Yes.
And you also believe that you moved it, though, right?
I believe I did.
Yeah, you've indicated to other people that you moved it, right?
I indicated that I believed I did.
Well, you've said that you moved that item too, didn't you say? You didn't say believe, you said I moved it.
I don't think I said that.
You tested, with regard to this particular issue, did you talk to any individuals that were assisting in your case? For example, a psychologist or somebody with a master's a social worker?
Yes.
And you indicated certain things to them, right?
That's right.
And you indicated that.
Objection, this is beyond the scope of questions.
Approach, please.
Sustained.
You also indicated that to the jury that you went to Utah, didn't you?
Yes.
And you met with an individual by the name of Brian Burns, right?
Yes.
Where did you fill up with gas?
I don't remember.
Do you remember whether or not you used a credit card or a debit card?
I don't remember.
One of the things that you do remember, though, is that you used a gun, right?
On June 4th, yes.
Yes, you did use a gun, didn't you? And it was in your hands, right?
Yes.
One of the other things that you indicated as part of your statement to the jury was that it was in a holster. Do you remember saying that?
I remember saying at one point it was in a holster.
All right. You also indicated it was in a box at another time, didn't you?
I don't remember indicating that.
Well, then you indicated when you were being asked the questions that maybe it wasn't in a holster. Do you remember saying that?
I remember saying maybe it was, maybe it wasn't on June 4th. I don't recall.
Well, initially you did say that it was in a holster, didn't you?
It was at one point.
Right. And so, as you sit here today and you think about it, which is it? Was it in a holster or was it in a box?
Well, at that moment, I didn't have time to sit and examine it. I just grabbed it. I reached up. I didn't even get that high. I just reached my arm up and grabbed it.
I understand that you just reached up and grabbed it. I want to know whether or not it was in a holster or not.
I can't tell you that.
Even though you did indicate previously that you thought it was in a holster. Right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony and argumentative. He can't testify for her and argue against him.
Restate your question.
You did tell us before that the gun was in a holster, didn't you?
At one point, it was in a holster, and it was also not in a holster. So I saw it at a few occasions. One point it was in a holster,
Ma'am,
one point it wasn't.
I'm not asking you to give me this long answer. I'm asking you, isn't it true that you told us in response to a question that the gun was in a holster when you grabbed it? Do you remember saying that?
Objection, argumentative, ask and answer mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled. You may answer.
I remember saying that I don't recall if it was in the holster when I grabbed it.
That's what you remember now, right?
That's what I remember saying, yes.
Right. And again, are you having any memory problems today?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, who else would be aware of you having any memory problems other than you?
Objection, argumentative.
Well, you seem to imply that I am, so maybe
I'm
you are.
not implying anything. I want you to tell me whether or not you're having any memory problems right now.
Well, I've already answered that and said not that I'm aware of.
So when not that I'm aware of means no to you, is that what we're saying? If we're gonna,
Objection, ask and answer, argumentative.
the other thing is that you indicated that at some point you bought a 9mm handgun after you killed Mr. Alexander, right?
Yes,
You remember that question by the jury, right?
yes,
And one of the things that you indicated with regard to that 9mm handgun was that you bought it for personal reasons, right?
that's correct.
Personal safety reasons, right?
Yes,
And the reason that you're cautious or worried about your safety was because you were going to go on a camping trip, right?
that was just one of the reasons.
No, but that's what you told us, though, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
I told you that was one of the reasons.
That was the main reason. And do you remember that you also told them that this trip that you were going to go on required you to have a handgun because it was going to only be guys? Do you remember telling us that?
No, it was not required. It was just something that made me feel safer.
Ma'am, do you remember saying that you wanted to take the gun, the 9mm, on this camping trip because it was only guys? Do you remember saying that?
Yes, that I knew of. Only guys were going so
Well-
far. We were still organizing the trip.
That you knew of. We're not asking you to tell us anything about what anybody else knows. We're asking you to tell us what you know of. You don't have to add that on there. Do you understand that?
Okay.
Objection, argumentative. She can answer the questions he
Sustained.
poses.
Ma'am, didn't you tell us that you bought the gun in anticipation of a camping trip where there were only going to be men, right?
Objection, ask and answer. I think we're on 3 times on this one now.
Overruled. Answer the question.
I remember indicating that that was one of the reasons I purchased a handgun.
And you also said that when you were on this camping trip, that you never know what may happen and you just wanted to be cautious, right?
That, but I never went on the camping trip.
I'm not asking you if you went on the camping trip.
You phrased it that way.
Ma'am, isn't it true that I asked you about whether or not you said you never know what may happen and you have to be cautious? You used the word cautious, right?
Yes,
And you were worried about going on a camping trip with a bunch of guys and what they might do because according to you, they drink beer or whatever it is that they drink. Do you remember saying that?
yeah, I just wanted to be careful.
Yeah. You really didn't need to go on this camping trip at all, did you?
No,
Objection, argumentative. Beyond the scope.
Overruled.
And this gun that you were buying and this trip that was involved, you also told us that there were ladies that were going also, right?
we were trying to organize it, so that was a possibility, but so far I was the only lady on board with the trip.
And even though you said that you had this, you told the jury that you had this problem or this experience with Mr. Alexander, that's the reason that you wanted to take the gun, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Sustained.
The fact that you had been involved with Mr. Alexander and the issue involving Mr. Alexander, that was one of the reasons why you were cautious, right?
Objection, still mischaracterizes her testimony. It's the same exact question.
Approach, please.
us that part of the reason that you were cautious was because you had previous bad experiences with Mr. Alexander and physical violence.
Yes, that was one of the reasons.
And one of the other things that you told us was that you read the Book of Mormon, right?
Yes,
And you told us that you've read it from cover to cover, right?
yes,
And in fact, this interest in the Book of Mormon, you also told us, started back in, September of 2006, correct?
correct. And I need to correct my last answer. I didn't read it cover to cover. I just read to the end of the Book of Mormon, but they have a huge index in the back that I didn't read. Sorry.
But you're saying that you read the content of it, right?
Of the book, yes.
And this interest started back in September of 2006, right?
Yes,
And you indicated that the way you phrased it was that, well, you tried to follow the mandates in the Book of Mormon, right?
I don't know that I indicated that way, but yeah, that would have been a goal of mine.
Sure, you told us the thing about coffee. You know, that was one of the things that the religion indicated was something that shouldn't be engaged in, right?
That's correct. It's not in the
And
Book
you
of
tried.
Mormon.
I guess the point is you try to be a good Mormon, right?
Overruled.
I did my best to appear that way.
And one of the things that you also told us, or told the jury, was that, well, even though you did your best, you followed guidance from certain people, right?
That's correct.
One of the people that you followed guidance from was Mr. Alexander, right?
Yes,
And that was, according to you, with regard to the issue of sex, right?
yes,
Chastity was the term that was used, right?
yes,
And based on what he told you, you acted in conformity, or you acted in a certain way, right?
yes,
But you, of course, though, independently read the Book of Mormon, right?
that's correct.
And the Book of Mormon, though, does talk about lying, doesn't it?
Yes,
And in fact, Nephi 9:34, are you familiar with that?
not off the top of my head, no.
Well, let me mark something and see if this is something that you come across.
Yes.
Ma'am, you remember the jurors asking you about this issue involving the Book of Mormon, right?
Yes,
And do you remember saying that you've read the book from beginning to end, right?
that's correct.
And this Book of Mormon, you've said, has guided your life, right?
I didn't say that.
Well, didn't you say that as part of the Book of Mormon, you don't engage in drinking caffeine anymore, right?
No, I said that that wasn't part of the Book of Mormon.
That was what? I can't hear you.
I said that was not part of the Book of Mormon. It's doctrine that came out later.
You're talking about the Doctrine and Covenants, right?
It's not, coffee isn't specified in Doctrine and Covenants, but the word of wisdom was clarified more in the 20th century, I think it was, and that's when coffee came into that verbiage.
And this is all intertwined with the Mormon faith, right?
It is.
And this is the faith that you try to follow, right?
Yes.
And that's what you told the jury, right?
Yes,
It includes the Pearl of Great Price, right? Doesn't it include that?
it does.
These are part of the books involved in the Mormon faith, right?
Yeah, it's all part of the canon.
Right, and you've read them, right?
Yes.
And you've attempted to incorporate them in your life, right?
Yes.
And this is at least part of the problem that you had involving the vow of chastity, right?
I would say that. Yes.
But these books that we've talked about, specifically the Book of Mormon, Nephi 9:34, also talks about other issues, doesn't it? Lying.
Overruled.
It does talk about lying, doesn't it?
You said Nephi?
Nephi, right, 9:34.
That's First Nephi?
Yes, Nephi 9:34. Why don't you take a look at Exhibit 524 and see if you recognize it.
This is Second Nephi.
Pardon?
This is Second Nephi. Yes.
It does talk about lying, right?
Yes.
And it lays it out in no uncertain terms, right?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you tell us, based on looking at that, what the mandate is involving lying?
That more or less you're condemned to hell.
For lying, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to have that back. So even though you tell us that you follow the Book of Mormon, really, and that's what created a problem for you and Mr. Alexander, you really don't follow the Book of Mormon when you told that to the jury. You really don't follow it, do you?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
Well, you're talking about what time period?
Well, I'm talking about your life, ma'am. This is what we're talking about. Isn't it true that you told the jury that this book sort of governs the way you style your life, right?
I didn't say that.
No, it isn't. Doesn't govern your life. Isn't that what we just talked about?
Objection mischaracterizes your testimony.
Overruled. You mean,
Can you repeat that?
Doesn't the book govern your life? Don't you run your life according to what it lays out?
Well, it's not a yes or no question. I mean, answer, so if you'd let me.
I'm asking you whether or not you use this as a guide. Isn't that what you told us in your everyday life? When the jurors asked the question, you said, yeah, that's what I use. And you told us that you've read it from cover to cover, right?
I wasn't asked that way, and I didn't answer that way.
You did tell us that you read it cover to cover, didn't you?
Yes.
Chapter at a time, right?
Yes.
That in it, it didn't have anything specific about chastity, right?
The word chastity may be in there, but it wasn't
Not
broken down
specific.
specifically.
There weren't anything specific that you could sort of hang on to guide your life, right?
Not in that book alone.
Right.
That's correct.
And you're implying there are other books, right?
There are other books.
And there are other books that you read, right?
In a different afterward, yes, there is another book that I read.
I didn't get the first part. What did you say?
For example, the other books would be like the one you read to Desiree Freeman. That's a book that I discovered in 2009.
So there are other materials out there, right?
Yes.
And you said that you've read those, right?
I believe I've read the bulk of them. I don't know if I've read them all cover to
But
cover.
if we're just going to, because of the time restriction that you put on it, let's just restrict ourselves to the Book of Mormon and back in 2006, 2007, 2008. As part of your indoctrination and to become baptized, you're required to know about these things, right?
Yeah, I think you're quizzed on them before you're baptized.
Well, sure. And one of the things is you don't lie, right?
I don't remember if that was one of the questions for baptism.
Well, no, I'm not asking if that's one of the questions in baptism. One of the questions in baptism is if you're going to follow the tenets of the Book of Mormon, right?
Objection, this is way beyond the scope of the jury questions.
Sustained.
So, when it's to your convenience, man, for example, the vow of chastity, then you say, this isn't specific enough. But when it comes to something like lying, then it doesn't apply to you. Isn't that what we're looking at?
Don't answer the question.
Objection, argumentative, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Approach, please.
Ma'am, one of the other things that you indicated to us was that there was a fight between you and Mr. Alexander on the eve of the Havasupai trip. Do you remember telling us that?
Yeah, the morning of, yes.
The morning, sure. And the way that fight started, actually, though, was because Mr. Freeman was trying to lighten the load that you were attempting to carry, right?
I don't think that was part of the fight.
Well, that's how this got started, didn't it?
That's how Mr. Freeman interpreted it because he wasn't in the bathroom when the fight actually exploded.
So you're saying that Mr. Freeman had absolutely nothing to do with the fight that took place between you and Mr. Alexander in the bathroom that morning? Nothing to do with it?
I would say that.
Pardon?
Well, maybe indirectly, but not the subject matter.
No, you said it didn't have anything to do with it. So, for example, the fact that it started downstairs and you started to cry and went to the bathroom had nothing to do with the fact that Mr. Alexander then went behind you. Had nothing to do with it.
I didn't cry.
Oh,
Downstairs.
So you were happy downstairs then, right?
I didn't say that either, no.
You were unhappy downstairs then.
I was a little, discombobulated because all my stuff was gone out of my backpack, and then I thought, where is it? And so they said it's over here, and I said, oh, okay. So I just took it upstairs because I needed to brush my teeth.
So discombobulated, is that the same thing as confused?
Somewhat, yeah.
Is that the same as being in a fog?
Well, I just woken up, so maybe I was a little bit.
And is that the same thing as having memory issues? Or is that something different?
That's different.
Overruled.
I would classify that as different.
Okay, so you may have been a little confused at that point, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I was confused at first.
And then you're saying that Mr. Alexander came upstairs and there was a fight that ensued, right?
That's correct.
Totally unrelated to this issue involving the backpack, right?
Unrelated, the subject matter of the fight was unrelated.
It was unrelated at all. It was subject matter. Unrelated means unrelated in terms of subject matter, space, and time. It had nothing to do with the argument that was downstairs, right?
There was no argument downstairs, but I wasn't happy or thrilled. I think I might have appeared irritated, but I didn't say anything. I just took the backpack and went upstairs. So it could have precipitated his posture of how he approached me in the bathroom, but he got really mad when he saw me taking everything out because I was looking for my toothbrush.
So there was an argument downstairs is what you said, right?
I don't think any angry words were exchanged. I wouldn't call it an argument.
Well, ma'am, didn't you just say that 30 seconds ago that there was an argument downstairs? You just said that.
I said the opposite 30 seconds ago.
Could you read back that portion, please? Her response.
then you're saying Mr. Alexander came upstairs and there was a fight that ensued, right? Answer, that's correct. Before that.
I believe so.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
Could you read it again, please?
And then you're saying that Mr. Alexander came upstairs and there was a fight that ensued, right? Answer, that's correct. Before that.
It was before that, correct. A response.
I was a little discombobulated because all my stuff was down out of my backpack. I said, where is it? They said, it's over here. I said, okay, so I took it upstairs because I needed to brush my teeth.
How about after that?
After that?
Where the word argument was used by her? If in fact she did.
It was unrelated at all. Unrelated means unrelated in terms of subject matter, space, and time. It had nothing to do with the argument that was downstairs, right? Answer, was that argument downstairs?
Well, we'll go on. So, you're saying there was no argument downstairs. I'll take that. You say that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't classify it as an argument. It was just a discussion so I could figure out where my stuff went.
And in terms of being downstairs, wasn't it actually Mr. Freeman that was going through your backpack, right?
It was, I don't know, it was already repacked by the time I woke up.
It was what?
It had already been repacked by the time I woke up.
So, you were here when he testified, right?
Yes.
So, you know what he said, right? I'm not asking you to tell me what he said, but you know what he said, right?
I have a general recollection of what he said.
But you were here, though, correct?
Yes.
And so you go back upstairs, right? And you're saying that that's when the argument really started, right?
Yes.
And the reason that that was a sort of a changing point in the relationship for you was because Mr. Alexander said something to you, right?
Yes.
And the words, according to you, that he said were, fuck you, right?
Yes.
And you said, well, I couldn't see that individual being the father of my children, right? Anybody who could use that language, right?
It was hard to envision that from that point on.
That's what you said, right?
Yes.
But you use those words too, don't you?
I have, yes, many times.
So, for example, when we were listening to the tape back on May 10th of 2008, that's the word that you used in that conversation, didn't you?
Right.
Objection, Your Honor, to be on the scope of your question.
Sustained.
You claim that you were offended by the word fuck you, right?
By the
Object to still be on the scope of the jury question.
Approach, please.
So, ma'am, it's true, though, that you would use that word yourself, right?
yes.
Objection.
Right?
Yeah, I've used it.
And, in fact, you used it back on May 10th of 2008, right?
Yes, I did.
The other thing, ma'am, is that, that with regard to this issue of chastity, you said that you took your guidance from Mr. Alexander, right?
The specifics, yes.
Yes, sure. That's actually not true, is it?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you knew it was wrong and you said, I don't care, even if it's wrong involving the sex, you're going to do it anyway?
At one point, regarding when we would go all the way with vaginal sex, it reached a point where we did say that, yes.
No, you said it, right? Not we. I'm not asking about what Mr. Alexander said. I'm asking, isn't it true that you said, even though you know it's wrong, not irrespective of what Mr. Alexander said, even though you know it's wrong, you said, I'm still going to do it anyway.
Objection, comment, question.
Overruled.
I think something about if it's wrong, I don't want to be right. I think I used that
Right.
verbiage.
So when you keep telling us that Mr. Alexander was your person who actually taught you and that the reason you were doing this stuff was because he was the one that was telling you, you knew it was wrong independent of that, didn't you?
That we were going all the way, yes, I knew that was
Well,
wrong.
no, you knew, right. And you said, don't want to be right, right?
Yeah, I did eventually say that.
One of the other things that we know, man, you claim that, when you were asked by the jury about your failure to call 911, do you remember answering that question?
That's correct.
And you were asked about that, and you said, well, it relates back to an experience that I had with Bobby Juarez. Do you remember telling us that?
Yeah, it did in part. I remember saying that.
Yeah. And you said that there was, at a point in your relationship with Mr. Juarez, there was a point when apparently there was a physical altercation between you and Mr. Juarez, right?
Yes.
And during this physical altercation, you got on the telephone and actually dialed 911, right? According to you.
Yes.
And you dialed 911, and according to you, the police called back, right?
Yes, after he hung up the phone.
Right. So he hung up the phone, but the police called back, right?
Yeah, I think it was the 911 operator.
Well, you're saying I think now, but previously you were certain that he called 911. Do you remember telling us
I
that?
called 911.
Okay, you called 911. So you were certain you called 911, right?
Pretty certain. I mean, it was chaotic, but I think I got 911.
Well, I know that you're saying it's chaotic now, but do you remember in response to the juror's question that you said, I called 911? Do you remember saying that?
Correct.
You didn't equivocate, did you?
I'm sorry?
You did not equivocate or show uncertainty when you answered that, did you?
I did not. That I
And so
recall.
you called 911 and Mr. Juarez hung up the phone according to you, right?
Yes.
And then there was a return call from the police department, right?
I don't know who returned the call. He just said, shut up, they're going to call back.
Well, okay, somebody called back, right?
Yes.
And you heard him talk about this issue involving you and him, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
He didn't talk about our issues.
Well, you said he convinced whoever was on the other end of the line that everything was all right. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
And that as a result of that, the police didn't come out there, right?
That's correct.
And so you said, well, because of that, that's the reason I didn't call the police when Mr. Alexander that you claim abused you, right?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, you did say that in response to the question by the jurors. You were asked, why didn't you call 911, right?
Yes.
And you said, well, I had this situation with Mr. Juarez. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
And so you're saying that just because of this situation that happened many years ago, that's the reason why you didn't call 911 when Mr. Alexander abused you, right?
No, that might have been a small reason, but I gave a bigger reason for not calling 911.
But that was part of the reason that you told us about, right? You did connect the two together, didn't you?
The question connected the two, so I answered it accordingly.
I'm not asking about the question. You responded to the question and you connected the two together, didn't you?
Objection, asked and answered, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
No, the question connected the two, and I responded to the question.
Okay, so in this case, you're saying that your response was the fault of the question, not your response.
Objection, argumentative.
Well, did you or did you not connect the two in response to whatever the question was?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
If the question had mentioned both calls, or the time I called Bobby, but I didn't with Travis, then that's the reason I answered that way.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you whether or not you did tell us the story about Bobby Juarez and the 911 call.
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
Yeah.
And that was in part, that discussion was in part involving Mr. Alexander and the claimed physical abuse, right?
Objection mischaracterizes her testimony. She's repeatedly said it's related to the question.
Overruled. You may answer the question.
Will you repeat it, please? I'm sorry.
Isn't it related? It's true that you told us that part of the reason you didn't call 911 was because of your prior experience with Mr. Juarez.
That was part of the reason.
But nothing really stopped you from calling 911, right?
Objection argumentative.
Rephrase.
Did anything stop you from calling 911?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
Well, in the heat of the moment, yeah, Travis did. But
Pardon?
afterward, in the heat of the moment, Travis did. But afterward, I could have.
Sure you could have, right?
Yes,
And you didn't though, right?
that's correct.
You could have taken photographs, right?
Yes,
In fact, you took photographs of the injury to your finger that you suffered, according to you, at Casa Ramos, right?
yes, I did.
And you told us that you suffered this injury. Is it breaking a margarita glass or is it against an item? Which of the two is it?
I jammed it against a metal edge as I was putting margarita glasses away.
So it's all related. Okay. And so you could have taken, you remember leaving in April of 2008 to go home, right?
Yes.
Moving. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And
Objection beyond the scope of the jury questions.
do you remember telling the jury that you moved back to Wairika in April of 2008?
Yes.
They asked you about that, right?
I don't remember if that was one of the questions, but that's what I said.
And do you also remember that you told the jury in response to one of their questions involving the issue involving the injury to your neck? Do you remember talking to them about that?
Yes.
And this issue involving the injury to your neck, you could have taken pictures of that, right?
Yes.
In fact, you could have taken those pictures yourself, right?
Yes.
And because, in fact, you did it as late as June 3rd of 2008. You actually took pictures of your neck, right?
My neck?
Yes.
June 2008, I guess.
June 3rd, 2008.
Oh, yes, I did.
And in fact, you were in a car when you took those photographs, right?
Yes.
Let me show them to you.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Approach, please.
And you could have taken pictures of your other injuries too, couldn't you?
Yes.
But you didn't do that, right?
No, I was ashamed of those.
Ma'am, one of the things that you told us was that during the attack, you actually went inside the closet, right?
When I was trying to run away from his attack, yes.
You did go in the closet, right?
Yes.
And you went in and you shut the door, right?
Yes.
And when you shut the door, one of the things that you did was that you went up to get the gun, right?
Yes.
Do you remember telling this detective, Flores, that Mr. Alexander did not have a gun?
Yes, I do.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Overruled.
You did tell him that, right?
I did.
That was a lie? Is that what you're saying now?
Yes.
But that was on June 10th of 2008, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was one day after the police found the body, right?
Yes.
That call was initiated by you, right?
Yes.
The detective wasn't interviewing you per se. In other words, he didn't go to you and try to use his technique on you or anything, right?
Objection calls for speculations beyond the scope of the jury question.
Overruled.
I assumed he was, per an attorney I consulted with.
But if you assumed he was, you were aware of what was going on and you weren't going to give him anything, right?
I didn't want to tell him about his gun. I remember my heart started racing when he asked about it.
So you say that on June 10th, you did say that the victim did not have a gun, right?
Yes, I did.
Let's take a look at exhibits numbers. Let's start with number 70. You say that you're about, what, 5'5½", right?
5'5.5" or 5'6", somewhere
Okay.
between there.
And you say that standing on the ground there, you can reach all the way to the top of that shelf, right?
Not standing on the ground. I stand about eye level to the picture of his dad.
I did not hear what you had to say, so eye level is where?
Where the photograph is. About that.
Where the what?
Where the photograph is.
Up here?
Yes.
So you're saying that your eyes were straight across on that photograph, right?
Yes. I don't know if it's the top or the bottom, but it's about eye level with the photo.
Eye level means your eyes are right across from that photograph, right?
Somewhat like that, yes.
No. I would like a bit of certainty from you.
Well, I can't give you certainty unless I'm standing in the closet.
I'm not asking you to stand in the closet. I'm asking you
That are on the right.
well, would it be this shelf?
I probably needed a higher shelf to get up
So
there.
it would be this shelf then, right?
I don't remember if it was that one or the one above it, but it
It could have been
was
this
one
one
of
then,
those
right?
two. Yeah, it was one of those two.
So it was this one or this shelf here, correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, those shelves are resting shelves, aren't they?
Do you mean resting as in?
Well, don't they have, for example, you can even see it here. And I'll bring it in so that you can see what I'm talking about. See there are little holes there? You see that right there?
Yes.
And since you've been there lots of times, you know that those shelves have some little pegs that go in there, right? To hold the shelf, right?
I know that because I see it in the photograph.
Well, you cleaned those, right?
Yes.
And you can see that throughout this whole thing, that these are really nothing more than resting shelves with shelves that rest on 4 metal pegs, right?
Yes.
You're familiar with those kinds of shelves, aren't you?
Somewhat, yes.
Well, you've been around them before, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And so you know, for example, let me just ask you, did you know that the rating on these shelves was 40 pounds? Did you know anything about that?
Objection foundation.
Just ask.
This fact's not in evidence.
Sustained.
Do you know what the rating was for these shelves?
What do you mean by rating?
How much weight they were capable of taking?
No.
But you say that you have had experience with these kinds of shelves, right?
I think I've assembled things. If it's
Sure.
plywood, I don't know if it's solid wood or plywood.
And if you, for example, step on one of these shelves with any force, and when this was happening, you were afraid for your life, right?
Certainly.
And you weren't worried about the shelves at all, were you?
I wasn't thinking about the shelves.
No, you were worried about your life, right?
I was worried about his pursuit. Yeah.
Well, his pursuit was only relevant or important because you were worried about your life, according to you, right?
Yes.
Objection mischaracterizes your testimony.
Overruled.
Right?
I was. Yes.
And so, for example, if you're going in there, you're not thinking about making sure that everything stays clean, are you?
That's correct.
You're not going in there making sure that everything stays in order, are you?
That's right.
So, for example, if you need to step here or there, one of those two, and that's necessary, you're going to put your foot and get on up there, right?
Yeah, my foot just hit the ledge, the edge.
Sure. And you're saying that your foot just hit the edge of this shelf, right?
That's right.
It didn't go all the way into the shelving, right?
Right.
But in terms of the arrangement here, if you moved something or if you moved some shoes aside, you weren't worried about neatness, I guess is my point, when you were jumping on that shelf, were you?
Right. I wasn't even worried about moving things.
Right. Because, again, you were worried for your life, right?
Yes.
There's really nothing here that's out of order, wouldn't you agree?
I agree with that.
And you did say that you did step on the edge, and you were careful to tell me that you didn't put your foot all the way in, right?
No, I would have fallen backwards if I had done that, probably.
Sure. But actually, if you would have put your foot right there at the edge, ma'am, wouldn't that shelf, the way you describe it, if you just put it here on the lip, which is what you told us, wouldn't that shelf have tipped over?
Objection, argumentative, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, ma'am, you told us you were familiar with these shelves, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Well, no, you told us that you put them together, right?
Not these ones specifically.
These types of shelves.
Yes,
You
I
told
have.
us that, right?
Yes.
You know that they rest on some metal pins, right?
I don't know about that.
Well, if you put them you just told us you put these kinds of shelves together, right?
Objection, foundation.
Overruled.
I've done that, yes.
And so we talked about the fact that these shelves rest on pins, right?
Do you mean like where the little holes are?
You put them
for the
together,
pins?
sure.
Okay. I think if we're talking about
Right.
the same thing, then yes.
Objection, she did not say she put these shelves together.
Sustained.
You put shelves like these together, didn't you?
I've done that, yes. Not
And
of
you
that
know that
size.
these shelves rest on pins, right?
Objection, asked and answered. We've done this about 3 times now.
Sustained.
So you do know that if you attempt to put your foot here with any weight, and you are putting your body weight on this shelf when you go get the gun, aren't you?
Objection, argumentative, compound question, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Yes, I did climb up there.
Right. And you're putting your weight on that shelf is my question.
Yeah, part of my weight,
Right.
certainly.
And you weighed about, what, 135 back then?
I think I weighed 120.
All right, you weighed 120. And when you put your foot up there, you then reached up with a hand, didn't you?
Yes.
And any idea which hand you reached up with?
Whichever hand wasn't holding the top shelf.
So in addition to that, you say that you put your foot on one of these two, reach up here, and then with the other hand, you're holding on to the other shelf, right?
Yeah, I just sort of jumped up there real quick and grabbed it and jumped down.
And all without disturbing anything, right?
Yeah, I didn't need to put my foot inside on the shelf.
Right, you put it on the ledge, right?
That's correct.
And you weren't worried about not putting your full weight on it, right?
I wasn't concerned about that.
Pardon?
I wasn't thinking about that.
No, because you were worried about what was coming up behind you, right?
Yes.
And then you reached up and you got the gun that was kind of in the back, right?
It was in the corner, yes.
And then you got the gun, right?
Yes.
And then you stepped down, right?
I might have stepped down or jumped down, I don't remember.
Okay, you came down to the ground, right?
Yes.
And then you came down to the ground, and my question to you, as previously you said, there was a holster. Was there a holster there now that we've gone over there? Yes or no?
I don't.
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
And you then grab the gun, right?
Yeah, I grabbed the gun.
You go into the bathroom, right?
Yes.
And you grab and turn and point it at Mr. Alexander, right?
I turned, yes.
And you told us previously that it was your belief at that point inside the bathroom that the gun was unloaded, right?
I wasn't thinking about it being loaded or unloaded. I just wanted him to stop.
Ma'am, I know you just you want us to believe that, but didn't you testify to this jury in response to their question that you thought the gun was unloaded? Yes or no?
I'm sorry, there was a lot of people talking.
Isn't it true that you told this jury that when you stood there and you pointed that gun at Mr. Alexander, that you thought it was unloaded? You told them that in response to one of the questions, right?
Yeah, my understanding was that it was typically unloaded. It had been loaded. It had been loaded at one time. I certainly wasn't thinking of shooting him. I just wanted him to stop.
Yes or no?
Okay.
Objection, she said he testified she didn't know whether it was loaded or not.
Overruled. Answer the question.
That I thought it was unloaded.
Yes or no?
I don't remember thinking this gun is unloaded. I remember somehow thinking that I'm not going to shoot him. Like I wasn't thinking that. I wasn't thinking it's loaded and I want to point it at him. I just wanted him to stop. I don't remember what I was thinking necessarily. It was just, it all happened very fast.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you whether or not in response to one of the jury questions, whether or not you indicated to them, the jury, as part of the question, that as you held your hand out, that you believed the gun was unloaded. That's all I'm asking.
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
I don't remember the specific answer I gave on that. I just remember that I don't recall it being loaded, or I don't remember even thinking about whether it was loaded or not.
Then I guess would you have a quibble if I told you that that's what you said to them?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
If it wasn't loaded, ma'am, and you told us before that Mr. Alexander told you it wasn't loaded, right?
He did.
You told us that, right?
He told me both, yes.
Yeah, you told that to the jury, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Alexander said it's not loaded, right?
He said it's not loaded, and then one day he loaded it, so he said it was loaded.
Ma'am, but you said you didn't include this part about loading. You did say that he told you it was unloaded, right? He did tell you that, right?
Yeah, initially he assured me it was not loaded.
Right. And so you go with these words of Mr. Alexander telling you that he believed it was unloaded, and then you also take your belief that you think it's unloaded based on what he told you, and you take this, run into this closet to get that. What were you going to do with the gun? Throw it at him?
Objection, mischaracterizes testimony and is argumentative.
Sustained.
Well, what were you going to do with the gun if it's unloaded, ma'am?
I testified that I pointed it at him.
I'm not asking you what you testified to.
She's answering the question.
Then she's being non-responsive, Judge.
All right. Counsel approach, please.
Ma'am, given all this predicate information that you told us about Mr. Alexander, telling you that the gun was unloaded, you believing it was unloaded, when you were getting that gun, what were you going to do with it if it's unloaded?
I was thinking of just pointing it at him because if I know personally that if a gun was pointed at me, my first instinct would be to stop. And that's what I wanted him to do.
But if he had already told you that it was unloaded, why would you believe that he was going to stop? If he had previously told you it was unloaded?
It was just a hope because that's my philosophy about if I had to look at the end of a barrel of a gun, I would stop. And I didn't have time to sit and rationalize whether or not he would care, whether it was unloaded or loaded or what. I didn't know. I just wanted him to stop.
So you grab this gun that he has told you is unloaded and you go into the bathroom, right?
That's right.
And you point that gun, right?
Yes.
You know what guns do, right?
Yes.
So if you thought it was unloaded, why are you pointing it?
Because
Ask and answer.
Sustained.
Ma'am, we've talked about in the closet, but in the bathroom. What, in the bathroom specifically, what were you hoping to accomplish Not in the closet, but in the bathroom. What were you hoping to accomplish as you extended your arms out with an unloaded gun?
Objection, ask and answer. There was never any testimony that she pointed the gun at him in the closet. He's trying to mischaracterize the testimony to ask the same question.
Sustained. Sustained.
The light in that closet, ma'am, it was off, wasn't it, when you went in there, right?
I don't remember.
And you had no problems, though, locating the gun, right?
I don't remember having any problems.
Even though you really hadn't seen it that often, right?
Yeah, it's not something I went and looked at often. That's
Right.
correct.
But you had no problem finding it, right?
That's correct.
So it wasn't like you were so excited or so in a fog that you had any problems finding it, right? That didn't affect you at that point, right?
I don't remember having any problems. I reached around for it. It was there, and I grabbed it.
And then he came after you inside into the bathroom, and then you pointed this. In your opinion, and your testimony is that you were just pointing the gun at him when he came at you, right?
Yes.
You would agree that it requires you to put your finger on the trigger and pull it for it to fire, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Well, you were there, right?
Yes.
And so you fired the gun, you shot him in the head, and you killed him, right?
Objection, Your Honor, mischaracterizes the evidence.
Overruled.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the afternoon recess at this time. Please be back in the designated area at 10 minutes after 3. Please remember the admonition. You are excused. Counsel, please approach. Ms. Arias, the jurors have some additional questions for you. How many times in total did you see Travis's gun?
I can remember 3 specific times. One when I discovered it, another time when I was cleaning that area again, and then on June 4th.
Regarding Darrell and guns, you mentioned he showed you the safety and such. Did he have you practice those things?
No, I didn't even touch it. He just went over it very quickly and then showed me where he kept it while we were on our camping trip.
For verification, were you and Matt McCartney living in separate cities while he was with Bianca?
Yes. I was in Ashland, and he wasn't in the city. He was at Crater Lake, which is it's more a national or state park. It's a resort.
Was it possible that he believed you two were on a break or broken up at that time?
I guess it's possible, but it wasn't any definitive verbiage that we had discussed. So he still came to my house every weekend. We were intimate, so, we didn't break up, but I don't know what he was thinking.
If you still felt threatened after having shot Mr. Alexander, why did you use a knife instead of just shooting again?
Well, I know that I dropped the gun when he hit me, and I don't know where the gun went, because when we fell, it was no longer in my hands, and I don't really remember picking up the knife. I just remember feeling threatened, and he was the immediate threat.
You said you remember putting the knife in the dishwasher after killing Travis. but you also say you don't remember anything after dropping the knife on the bathroom tile, which is correct.
Well, I know that he was trying to pin me down to a black and white answer, but I have a vague memory of putting a knife in the dishwasher. I'm just not sure if that's the memory from June 4th or if I'm confusing that with a prior incident, because I've done dishes in that house many times. And I have mentioned that I do have a vague memory of doing that. And we did use his knife to cut the rope, so it's possible that that knife went back into the dishwasher.
Does being baptized generally require that you follow the doctrine laid out in the Book of Mormon?
Yes, it does.
Did you take photos of injuries to your neck?
I took a photo of myself in the U-Haul truck. It wasn't for the purpose of my injuries on my neck. I don't know if they're visible in that photo. I haven't seen it in years. I know I had makeup on there. I don't know if I'd put makeup on my arms or not. And I had the camera like this, so I don't know if it can be seen on my arms. It was mostly for my face. I think I was wearing a 49er shirt. That's all I can remember. So I know that I put makeup on to hide the bruises, not to make any record of them. That I was trying to not make a record of them.
How many phone calls, texts, and emails were exchanged between you and Travis on Tuesday and early Wednesday morning, June 3 and 4, 2008? What were the times, the length of each communication? And just so the record is clear, you've had the opportunity to review Exhibits 362, 363, and 366. Is that correct?
That's correct. I haven't reviewed it thoroughly, so I'll just need to count real quick. And that was phone calls and text messages between the 3rd and 4th?
Phone calls, texts, and emails.
Okay. I know some of these are duplicates on here. Some of the calls are listed twice, the same call. So I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like somewhere between 5 and 9, I'm guessing, because some are duplicated. So, as far as phone calls, text messages, I know we texted back and forth, but I don't know that there are any text messages from the 3rd that were saved or recovered. And I don't think we emailed on the 3rd or 4th.
Follow up, Mr. Nurmi.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Arias, a few minutes ago, you were asked about baptism and the Book of Mormon and following the dictates of the church. Do you remember being asked that a few seconds ago?
Yes.
Okay. Were you a perfect Mormon?
No, nobody's a perfect Mormon.
And one of the things that you would do when you're not, that you told us when you're not in complete adherence to the Book of Mormon is speak to the bishop about those discrepancies or misbehaviors, if you will. Is that accurate?
Yeah, if the transgression is serious, you should speak to your bishop. If it's something considered a little bit more minor, then it's more left between you and God rather than actually sitting down with the bishop, which is a more formal procedure for more serious transgressions.
Okay. And consistent with that and consistent with you, the question about being asked about following the doctrine, you, during the course of your relationship with Mr. Alexander, to use your words, had some transgressions, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And so we're clear, you were not a Mormon until you were baptized into the faith after you met Mr. Alexander, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So as it relates to these transgressions that you just told us about, did you ever seek to go to the bishop about these transgressions?
Yes, I did.
And what transgressions specifically are we talking about?
We're talking about sexual sin.
Okay. And sexual sin being those that you engaged in with Mr. Alexander, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we're not talking about any other sexual sin with anyone else since you became a member of the Mormon Church, correct?
That's correct. Travis was the only person that I was with during that time.
Okay. And were you, as it relates to Mr. Alexander, were you encouraged to go to the bishop to talk about these transgressions or not talk about these transgressions with your bishop?
Travis discouraged me.
And as it relates to these transgressions and following the doctrine, after Mr. Alexander died, did you ever go to your bishop or a bishop and speak of these transgressions?
I did talk to him about the sexual transgressions, but I was not in a position where I admitted to him about what actually happened on June 4th.
I'm sorry, the last part of that was what? I just didn't hear it.
What happened on June 4th would also be considered a transgression, and I didn't talk about that with him, but I wanted to talk about all of the sexual sin we were engaging in throughout most of our relationship.
Okay. And you were asked another question about photographing the injuries you occurred on June 4th. Do you recall being asked that question?
Objection. The question involved the injury to the neck, not on anything on June 4th, from the jury.
Approach.
Ms. Arias, I misspoke a bit. As it relates to injuries that you suffered in your neck in April of 2008, did you ever take photographs of those?
I don't think any were captured in the photographs. I was wearing makeup. I never took any photos specifically to photograph the bruises and his fingerprint finger marks.
And what was the last part of what you said?
The finger marks that he left.
Okay. And he referring to Travis Alexander, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why not? Why didn't you document these injuries?
Well, it's something that I wanted to forget, not something I wanted to focus on and remember. It has a lot to do, again, with the law of attraction, and I would never have thought of incriminating Travis, and it's not anything that I felt like by photographing something or documenting it or writing it down, it solidifies it and it brings it more into, well, it was very much reality, but it solidifies it more and begets more of that stuff, and that's something that I was hoping would go away and end. And I believed it would end after I moved.
Believe what would end?
The physical violence.
You also mentioned earlier that you were ashamed of these injuries. Is that part of the reason why you wouldn't photograph yourself?
Yeah. Yes, I was definitely ashamed and embarrassed, and I just didn't want people to look at me differently because I put up with that or went through that, or somehow it was my fault because I elicited that from Travis, and I felt like I was just ashamed. Like I didn't want people to know that he did that to me, is all.
And you believe that those injuries were your fault?
Well, I was afraid that I would be perceived that way, and sometimes I did feel like I did things that provoked him.
No further questions.
Mr. Martinez, any follow-up?
With regard to your relationship to Matthew McCartney, in that relationship, ma'am, the question was asked whether or not you were broken up at the time that he was seeing Bianca. Do you remember that?
Objection mischaracterizes the question.
Overruled.
He asked, I think, not he or she, I don't know. The question was asked if it's possible that he perceived that. But no, we weren't broken up.
Isn't it true? Do you know somebody named Alice Laviolette? You do know somebody by that name, right?
Yes, I do.
She's someone who's assisting in your defense, correct?
Correct.
She's a social worker, right?
I don't know all of what she does.
Objection, that mischaracterizes her profession.
Isn't it true that you told her that you and Mr. McCartney were already broken up at the time that you confronted Bianca? Yes or no?
I did not tell her that. We broke up afterward.
Pardon?
We broke up after.
I know that's what you're saying. I'm asking whether or not you told Miss Laviolette that you and Mr. McCartney were broken up at the time he started to see Bianca.
Ask and answer.
Overruled.
Not when he started, but he continued to after we broke up.
So you weren't broken up at the time that he started to see Bianca, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
And you didn't tell that to Alice Laviolette?
No, I wouldn't have. We were still together.
All right. So, and with regard to the transgressions, you indicated that you did go seek or speak to a bishop, right?
Regarding the sexual transgressions.
And you also said that you didn't tell him everything, so you lied to him, right?
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Overruled.
Argumentative.
Overruled.
I did not confess that I was the person responsible for Travis's death.
So you lied to him, right?
Well,
Objection argumentative. Asked
Thank.
and answered.
You didn't tell the whole story then, right? That's what you said, right?
that would be accurate.
Anything else? Thank you.
Any more questions from the jury? Counsel, please approach. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all for today. Tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Please remember the admonition. You are excused. Have a nice evening.
Please stand for the jury.
The record will show that the jury has left the courtroom. You may step down, Ms. Arias. Anything else, counsel, for today?
No, thank you.
Adjourned.